Good morning and welcome to the Point. This morning, Decision 2016. Not the presidential election that everybody has been so focused on, but state house races. There are 110 of them around the state, and in many cases, term limits means there are open seats. Such is the case in the 70th district. That's Montcalm and part of Gratiot counties. There, Republican Rick Outman can't run again because he's served 3 terms. The Democrat in the race is unopposed in the primary, but there are 6 Republicans trying to replace Outman. You'll hear from each of them starting right now. Tell me about your background. What have you done? What's your work experience? What brings you to this point?
I'm coming to the race for being a non-political candidate. I have worked 19 years at Montcalm County Ambulance Service. I have worked 4 years at Montcalm County Road Commission. That's where I'm currently employed at. I've been 13 years with the local lumber yard, Big L Lumber in Sheridan, and I'm 50 years old, and I've been 45 years in Montcalm County.
Well, when you take that kind of experience, and you've obviously been in the district for a long time, what motivates you to run for an office like this? Because it's a big undertaking.
It is a big undertaking. I'm very passionate for my district. We lost a lot of manufacturing out of Montcalm County, and we need to get something back for our people. And that's what I'm here for. There's a lot of things going on in the state, but there's a lot of things going on in Montcalm County too, and Gratiot County. And Montcalm County is going through a lot of financial problems right now. And if there's some way that I can help down in Lansing to get the county back on their feet, that's what I'm looking to do.
I think most people know about Electrolux as it left Greenville, and that left a huge vacuum of jobs. But there are other things. Solar Ovonics, which was supposed to be kind of the new and upcoming thing, also came and left, and now it's been replaced, and there's some manufacturing going on.
Hitachi Magnetics was a huge industry up in Edmore, and now they're a parking lot. So yeah, we've lost a lot of manufacturing, and yes, Unisolar has sold the building. We've got some more business coming in there. We need to try and get some more people back to work, and that's my biggest goal. The
skill set for people to go into manufacturing today is certainly different than it was 30 years ago. I know that you have a community college in the area that does some skilled training. Is the problem in your area, from your perspective, about not having enough jobs or not having enough people that are qualified for those jobs?
I think it's not having enough jobs. All the jobs are located so far away, and travel time, babysitters, and everything. We need to get more jobs up in this area, and we can do it. I mean, we've got the manpower. We just need to get the jobs back there.
When you are talking to voters, people that you hope that will vote for you, what is their attitude? How do they feel about their condition in general, or maybe their view towards government? Because there certainly has been an exhibition of a lot of angst towards government in this election cycle.
Yes, one thing I'm getting good response is, I'm not a career politician. I come from a working career. I've worked my whole life. I've bought everything that I have. Nothing's been handed to me. And that's the one thing that I'm finding that they like. They're tired of the career politician making promises and not standing behind them. And I'm not out there making promises. I'm telling them I'm going to do the best job I can for the people.
Tell me about your background. What have you done? Where have you been? And what brings you to this point?
Sure. I've worked at the Michigan House of Representatives, actually started out as an intern and then worked in constituent relations and then as legislative director. Had the same experience in the Michigan Senate. was a page over there, served in a constituent relations role, and then also as legislative director. But in addition to that, I was a county commissioner over in Ionia County when I lived down there, and most recently was village manager for the village of Edmore.
So you've obviously been exposed to and involved in the political process, the legislative process, the governance process. What made you decide to want to seek elected office?
Sure, that's why I decided to run, because this year there's going to be over 1/3 of the House that's going to be term limited out of office. So you lose a lot of experience every 2 years. So I'll come in with a tremendous amount of experience, at the state level, at the county level, and at the village level, and that'll be a real advantage for our district coming in and basically being ready to hit the ground running on day one. That's experience that you don't see in a lot of these districts, and it's certainly experience that you don't see in any of my opponents.
Well, when you talk about experience, some would also interpret that as being part of the establishment. This doesn't sound like a good year for establishment candidates. Have you faced any of that as you've gone door to door?
I don't think so. I think being a younger guy and people hear my message and they know that I care an awful lot about the district, and having experience they see as a good thing. Oh, well, Jim, is going to step in and be effective. They want someone who's got their conservative values, but then can also turn them into real policy solutions, which I have a track record of doing, having taken a bill from its infancy all the way to the governor's desk. If you want to get anything done, that's what you need to have.
Talk to me about that story. What is that story that you have to tell? What are the issues that you're interested in? What are the values that you think, that you believe in, that are common values with the people in the district you hope to represent?
Our district was hit particularly hard during the recession, and my family as well. My dad worked at Electrolux, and when that went out, that was a big deal for our district. But there were a lot of factories and so forth that went out. Edmore, where I live, Hitachi left, and a lot of the suppliers for Electrolux left. So our economy has improved, but we're just not there yet. As I go door to door through the district, I hear a story that really, hits home for me, and that's that, hey, we're not making as much as we made 10 years ago, but the price of everything has gone up. Or, hey, we used to have 2 incomes, and now we have 1, and we don't really have anything left for retirement because they had to spend it during the recession, just trying to keep themselves afloat. So that's what I want to work on. I want to work on strengthening the economy even more, because it really hasn't, it's not hitting in our district yet. I mean, people are doing better, but we're certainly not back to the point where we were before. And so that's what I want to work on. I want to work on not only getting back to that point, but once we're there, keeping a recession as deep as the one that we felt from hitting again.
How do you match the jobs and the workforce, and how do you make that work for those people who may be nearing retirement? That doesn't happen in the short term.
Right, and that's a huge issue in our district as well, as matching up the skills with the jobs that are available. There are actually several welding jobs and skilled trades positions in our district that are open now, but people don't have the skills for those. What's exciting is I'm on the board for the Montcalm Economic Alliance, so I work directly with Montcalm Community College on different things, and this year they graduated some folks from Greenville High School and Central Montcalm and other high schools that were graduating with not only their high school diploma but also their 2-year associate's degree in these skilled trades positions. I think that's what we definitely need more of.
Tell me about your professional life. What have you done up to this point that leads you into this race?
I have considerable leadership experience in both the private sector and the public sector. I was a school board member at Lakeview Community Schools for 6 years. I was county commissioner in Montcalm for 10. I was on the governing board of the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission from 1985 to present. I'm now chairman emeritus, just at large. I was chair of the governing board there for 21 years. In addition to that, I had 1 national appointment with Bush 41 administration. I was one of the 3 farmers on the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation Board of Directors.
So you've obviously had a public service career, and one that has straddled politics a little bit, but
Yes.
now you're headlong into politics.
Yes.
In terms of a race for the State House. What made you decide that this was the time to do this?
Government is way overreached, far more at the federal level, but significantly at the state level as well. I have learned in my public and private careers both that in the simplest terms, government is nothing more, nor should be anything more, than the people's business. That business that they can't efficiently and effectively do for themselves. And we are so far overreached now. I call it the strangulation of regulation. At least that's what exists in my career in agriculture, where we just are, the compliance costs of trying to just keep up with the regulations are horrific.
When you think in terms of the overreach, obviously you talk about agriculture. Are there other areas that you see that government is trying to do things that, from your perspective, they need not do?
One of my reaching out to learn, I went to the Greenville Public Schools and spent 3 hours with a school board member, the superintendent, and other staff to figure out to what degree do they not have local control. Because the best control for positive results is at the local level. And what are the compliance costs for those? And so I was very much informed that in all sectors of our economy, public and private, that there's overreach.
How do you rein in government? If you're successful on your quest, you walk into a bureaucracy that to some degree exists because they have jobs in government and their jobs rely on making their jobs relevant in government. There is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to some government jobs.
That's true, and it's got more so even with term limits because we don't have institutional memory at the elected office level. Doing the bureaucrats, but not at the elected office level. I, number one, don't believe in unfunded mandates. If the federal government or the state government wants to issue a mandate, money needs to come with it. And to the degree that there aren't monies coming with it, the mandate should be repealed.
When you started down this quest, you have experience. You've run for office,
Oh, yes.
and so you know what this is like. However, it's a lot bigger geographic area, I'm guessing, than you have run for in the past. What have you learned during this campaign about the mood of people? Because, as I have mentioned a number of times, the mood of voters on the presidential primary circuit has changed the face of politics considerably. When you think about some of the people who have risen to the top, even if they weren't completely successful, they have certainly made an impact on this election cycle. What are you hearing when you go talk to people?
There are two competing movements that the national election reflected. One is there is an entitlement culture that wants more from the government with no responsibility or accountability for what they're getting. Secondly, there's a movement that think government has really overreached, out of touch, the establishment is not relevant anymore to their needs, and they want less government. They want security, but beyond that, they want less government.
That's half the field. 3 more candidates to come in the 70th District Republican primary when we come back. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. Democrat Ken Hart will be his party's nominee in the 70th District in November. But 6 Republicans are vying for that nomination. Now you'll meet the other 3 candidates. Tell me about your background. What have you done up to now?
My background is military. Outside of, after I graduated high school, and I graduated from Ithaca High School, I went directly into the military, did a little over 4 years, and then separated from the military for a couple years, and then went back in after 9/11, of course. So most of my adult life has all been in the Marine Corps, and doing various jobs in the Marine Corps.
So you go from a military discipline
Yes.
to the idea of running for public office, which some would say is undisciplined
Yes, absolutely.
in many
Would
ways,
agree.
but it is a big undertaking. What made you decide to run?
I've always been politically interested. However, I wasn't politically active. And I made that choice because in the military, whoever is elected is our leader. We don't have, a choice to disagree with their styles. So I never really supported or backed a candidate while I was in the military because, to me, if it wasn't the person that I, supported, then it would be hard for me to follow orders. And, ultimately our orders a lot of time are to go, over to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever we go and, go to war. So if I don't believe with their ideology, it's makes doing that a lot harder. So the last couple years, I could see where it seemed like morally and, economically and socially, we just have becoming more and more, corrupt and worse as a country. And I said, okay, I've dedicated my whole adult life to, supporting and defending the Constitution and the people of the United States. It seemed like a very smooth transition for me to choose to go to politics after that because, that's what politics is supposed to be. A politician is supposed to be your frontline defender of your rights. And as a Marine, I was doing that. So that's why it made the transition very easy for me, I think. And that's why I chose to get into politics.
When you think about state government as it is today, it is, as I've pointed out a number of times in a number of these interviews, and they all sound kind of the same from a questioning standpoint, because I try to ask everybody the same question to make it a fair gauge. But the way that state government functions today is essentially one party. Republicans are in control of the House and the Senate, the governor's office, etc. When you think about that, and when you look at the way state government has functioned over the past few years, what do you think needs to be changed, or what would you like to add to it?
Well, unfortunately, like you said, it's one party right now doing a lot of it, but truth be told, it's lobbyists, and it's the money that sits down in Lansing, and it's the money that sits down in Washington is actually controlling the representatives. When you have that influence, I don't think you can get a clear representation of the people, and that's what I aim to change. I think that's the biggest threat we have as a people, is the money influence in politics, and people that and it's not so much they're buying candidates, but if you take donations and you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations for campaigns and different organizations, you owe them people something. You can say that they don't owe anybody anything, but let's be honest. I mean, if somebody donates that much money to you, you owe them. They're going to expect certain results for your votes, and that's the kind of stuff that I think that's the single greatest threat, I think, to the American people, is the money that is dumped into politics.
Tell me about your background. What have you done that leads you up to this point?
Well, Rick, I've got a background that I think is desiring for people that are running for office. I've been in politics a little bit, but not a whole lot. I currently, do you want me to tell you a little bit about what I do when I hand out a palm card? When I hand people a palm card, I say that there's 6 people, and 6 Republicans in this race, 1 Democrat. The Democrat is from Alma. He's liked, but he's a weak candidate. He's going to win in August because he's going to vote for himself, but he's not going to win in November, in all likelihood. To be one of the 6 Republicans that you choose in August 2nd, they'll likely be the next representative from the 70th. I got into the race last because I wasn't real happy with how things were looking, the selection. Not saying they're bad people, they're good people. It's just I wasn't happy with the level of service, level of expertise. I'm currently a county commissioner. Been elected twice to that position. I served in 95, 96, and again in 15, 16. I'm currently 13 years on the City Planning Commission in the City of Greenville. I've been on the Preferred Federal Credit Union Board back in the early 90s. I've been 21 years on the Flat River Right to Life Board. That's a local right to life. I had to get off because when you're a politician, you can't be on the board. I've been 41 years a financial planner, which means I went from a life insurance agent to a stockbroker. I'm currently a stockbroker. I've got 13 grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. I am young enough to care, and I'm too old to be pushed around. And I think that makes for a good person to send to Lansing.
That's the how. What's the why? Why do you need to go to Lansing? What needs to be done in Lansing?
There's the tipping straw, the thing that made the final point, was when the State Board of Ed sent around a memo that they thought that I should be asking the school should be asking my grandchildren whether they're a boy or girl when they show up at kindergarten. That was the tipping stone.
You're talking about the bathroom debate that continues even as we sit here.
And then President Obama jumped on that about a month later. I wasn't happy with that at all, and that really was the tipping point. Changes in Lansing, I think that the past Congress, or past Senate has done a very good job. They've made the coercive abortion bill and they passed that. They've done a lot of revisions with schools. I think that those are done. One of my constituents asked me, he says, listen, if you get to Lansing, I want you to do something for me. And I said, what is that? He says, I want you to do less because it costs me more every time you do something. And I think that that's a good point. There's not a lot out of whack that needs to be changed right now. Now, I think that the teachers need to have a little bit less pressure in the testing put on them. I think we could eliminate one of the tests that they have to perform every year, maybe the MI test. They're at the point where they're not being able to teach the way they want to teach. They feel like there's just way too much testing. Some people in the teaching profession are saying, I'm not recommending anybody go into this profession anymore. And it shouldn't be that way.
First part's easy. Tell me about yourself. What's your background? What have you been doing up to this point in your life?
My background is I have a wife of 13 years. I have 3 small children and 1 on the way. I've been a road construction worker for 14 years. I've dabbled in politics in the past. I spent a short stint up in Washington, D.C., working in a congressman's office, and that's what I've been doing these past, years of my life.
What makes you, obviously you have a political interest, having been in Washington, and as you say, dabbling in politics. What made you decide to take that bigger step and get into a race yourself?
The tipping point was when the bailout bill came through. I sat back and I began to read it for what it was. I pulled it up on my TV, on my computer, and I just started reading it. And you saw that more money was going to administrating the money that they were given, that each department was given. And it was just seemed like such a waste of resources, and it was just, the bill itself I thought was bad. So without looking at my wife, and my wife didn't look up from her book, I said, time to run for Congress. And she just said, okay. And that was just kind of how it started, in a living room in the middle of a cornfield in Fenwick, Michigan.
When you think about running for office and the kind of time commitment it takes to do, how do you balance that? Because obviously this is a pretty full-time job just running for office.
Yeah, if you want to do this right and if you want to do anything well, you put your heart and soul into it. That's how you do it. So I quit my job, I dug into my savings, and that's how we're doing it. So it's doors every day, it's self-funded to a greater or lesser extent, whatever we can't raise, and it is a trial and it's hard, but without sacrifice there's not much gain. So I believe there's much to be gained here, so it deserves to have much attention.
What specific issues would you like to work on if you're successful?
If we're successful, one thing on the abortion front, I would like to establish personhood and establish when civil rights begin under Michigan law. That's a big one. Another thing we want to address is medical costs. We want doctors to be able to set their own prices. And if they can set their own prices, we can get competition in medicine. If we can get competition in medicine, we can stabilize healthcare costs or even lower them. And if we can do that, we can get jobs back to this state, because the largest expenditure for most business is healthcare costs. So if we can lower that here, we can actually make Michigan a more competitive state than other states in the union to get jobs back here through a market-driven economic policy that we know works, because those types of policies is what made America wealthy.
What is your view of government in general? This is a year of dissatisfaction with government. We have seen it on both sides in the presidential primary process, and we have heard a lot of it from a lot of people who are angry, quite frankly. What's your take on government as a whole?
I think government, I think it's flared up, but for the most part, government seems to be disconnected. We tend to vote for politicians because they have nice mailers or nice signs, but we don't vote for people because on substance. We need to vote on substance and ideas, because if we elect people based on endorsements and other criteria, you end up getting someone that's more driven to a job, to have a political career, than it is actually bringing substantive problem-solving ideas to aid people where they're at.
For more information on the 70th House race or any of those races, you can check with the Michigan Secretary of State website. Go to August elections. We're back with more To the Point. For the next 2 weeks, more races and more campaigns as we continue to focus on Decision 2016. I hope you'll join us each Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. To the Point.